Hare Krishna. Okay. So that means you want me to just start talking?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Well, let's begin with some pranati. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamahyam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's been a few weeks since we last had a discussion. We were talking about my book, Cow Care in Hindu Animal Ethics, and we didn't really get very far in terms of content of the book. So the idea, I believe, was that we continue. Saying this, I'm also perfectly open to discussing the Bhagavatam in the sequence of verses that you are discussing. So let me know how you would like. Otherwise, I'll just jump into this book further. Shall I do that, Sarva?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay.
Continue with the book.
Yeah, since our last time, I've been traveling a lot. There have been several festivals. You've also been having festivals. I've been in Slovenia and Croatia, and now I'm in southeast Germany, near Munich. So yeah, we're discussing this book, which I wrote in case someone wasn't there when I spoke last time. I published 2 years ago. No, it's getting close to 3 years. Beginning of 2020 with Palgrave Macmillan, publisher, which is a subsidiary of Springer Nature, which is a very large academic publisher. And I got the book published open access, which means you're all perfectly welcome to legally download a digital copy of the book. You can also buy a hard copy, but it's available. If you simply search the title of the book, you will immediately find on Google where to download it from. Again, the title is Cow Care in Hindu Animal Ethics. And a first question for many of us could well be, why do we have to use the word Hindu in the title of the book? And I would completely agree that I would be happy to exclude that word. However, I was more or less commissioned to write a book on Hinduism and animal ethics, and I focused on cows with the blessings of the series editor. The next book that I'm planning to do for that series is not going to have the word Hindu in it. Anyway, and in the first pages of the introduction, I, as they say, I problematize the word Hindu, and essentially I indicate that this book is not really about Hinduism as such. Still, I do take account of what is, very much prominent terminology, especially in India. And it's really a fact that these two ideas of cow protection, or typically one thinks of the sacred cow, and Hinduism are very much tied together. Incidentally, I don't know if I said last time, I was trying to find out, where does the expression holy cow come from? When did it first appear in the English language? And I couldn't get an exact date or anything, but it seems that it's from the early 20th century, from professional baseball, where the announcers, somebody started saying as an exclamation when someone would hit a home run or whatever, "Holy cow!" And one of the reasons that this expression came out was because it was a strict, I suppose it's still a strict rule in baseball, no swearing allowed, no profanity allowed on the field or whatever. So they, made a little workaround, and it became holy cow. Okay, that was a little bit of curious information.
I thought it came from Robin telling Batman, "Holy cow, Batman."
I think that came much later. Yeah. So in this, I'm going to go to the second chapter, which is, now I'll confuse you by saying it's second chapter, but it's called chapter 3. That's only because the publisher insists that the introduction be called chapter 1. So anyway, this is called Cows in Contested Fields, and I'm a bit playing with the idea of fields, and talking about some of the history in India of the cow protection movement and some of the controversies that arose also about the notion of animal sacrifice. And I give a little sketch of 4 personages, or personalities, as we like to say, who are significant in the story of the early cow protection movement. And the 4th of these, culminating this series that I'm giving, is Srila Prabhupada. I want to highlight and make a distinction between what Srila Prabhupada does and what these others are concerned about. They're all concerned about cows. The first three, however, are very much preoccupied thinking in terms of Hinduism. Hinduism and cows, or Indian nation and cows, and all of that. And of course, Prabhupada is not at all. That's not at all his purpose. His purpose is to spread Krishna consciousness worldwide, and integral to this, he wished to include cow protection. And he did not, and this I kind of underline, he never emphasized, I don't know if he even mentioned, the idea of distinguishing between what in India they like to call Deshi cows, indigenous Indian cow breeds, as opposed to what invariably in India are referred to as Jersey cows. No matter what the breed, they're all Jersey cows. Prabhupada never talked about this, to my knowledge. But I'm jumping ahead. I wanted to first mention these first three to give a little history. I think sometimes a little history is good to know. And so here we are. But I want to, before I continue, I want to offer my greetings and obeisances to Vrajalila Devi Dasi. Hare Krishna. Nice to see you. So the first is Dayanand Saraswati. Dayanand Saraswati was a sannyasi. He was originally from Gujarat. And he would mainly become known for his organization, the Arya Samaj, which is still going on today. He established this institution in 1875. And he had his purposes with that. It was, we can say broadly speaking, part of a wider movement of Hindu revival and reform. I'll just leave it at that. That's not really our interest here. But in, 5 years later, he wrote a pamphlet, 15-page pamphlet in Hindi called Go Karuna Nidhi, or could be translated Cow, the Reservoir of Compassion. This was a small tract, a small pamphlet, but it seems to have had considerable impact. And now I quote here from one scholar, Peter van der Veer. He says, Dayananda's efforts to ban cow slaughter found wide support beyond the circle of his followers. And how it found support is through creation of various cow protection societies. And these spread throughout India, I think mainly in North India, but it became a thing. And all of this had to do, or was tied to, one has to keep in mind what was going on in India in terms of the colonial presence of the British. The fact that the printing press was now becoming available. And of course, this ties right into the mission of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that they took on and recognized the value of the printing press. So this is going back a bit earlier. and for the purpose of this mission of cow protection, the printing press was being involved. I have a quote from the introduction to the Gokarna Nidhi, where he is declaring his purpose. He says, that animals such as the cow be protected as far as possible, and with their protection, agriculture and supply of milk and butter may increase, and thereby the comfort and happiness of all may grow more and more. May God grant us success in this goal at the earliest. So interesting that he says that if cows are protected, there will be an increase of milk and butter. In the course of his pamphlet, he does some interesting calculations. We have some numbers here. He says, essentially, he's making a kind of utilitarian argument for why cows should not be killed. Utilitarianism says essentially the greatest good for the greatest number is how you determine whether something should or should not be done. So he says, he calculates, a single cow can provide in her natural lifetime some 25,740 persons with one full serving of kheer. And that the grain produced by 6 oxen from plowing and threshing over 8 years can feed 256,000 people with a full meal. And then he says, in contrast, the flesh of one cow can feed only an estimated 80 beef-eating persons. And then rhetorically, he says, why should it not be regarded as a gigantic sin to kill lakhs of creatures for a petty gain and thereby deprive countless people? And then he goes on in the latter part of his pamphlet to have a sort of dialogue. He creates a dialogue, an imagined dialogue between a himsaka and a rakshaka, a killer and a protector. And let's see, the latter's position, that is the protector's, he argues by highlighting differences between humans and non-human animal carnivores, and by assorted other points. In their exchange, the killer agrees that those who kill animals and eat their flesh are sinners. But to purchase meat or to offer meat to Bhairava or Durga, or to accept meat that has been offered in a sacrifice, in a sacrificial rite, as prescribed in sacred texts, is surely not a sin. So that's the killer making that argument. Then Dayananda replies with a quote from the Manusmriti. And this you will be familiar with. Quote, one who permits the slaughter, the butcher, the slaughterer, the purchaser of the animal for slaughter, the seller of the animal, the cook who cooks the meat, the one who serves the meat, and the one who eats the meat, these are all killers. And then this I found very intriguing, and I wanted to look more into this to try to get original reference, but was not able. Dayanand insinuates a challenge to Queen Victoria. And he cites a proclamation of hers. That's what I was looking for, but couldn't find. To the effect that mute animals should not be subjected to the pain to which they had been at that time subjected. Then he asks, rhetorically, quote, if the intention of this provision is not to give any pain to the animals, then can there be any greater pain than that caused by slaughter? And then he goes on to say, the ruler receives taxes from his people only to protect them properly and not to exterminate cows and other animals, which are a source of happiness, both for the ruler and for his subjects. Please keep your eyes open and commit no harmful deeds, nor allow such deeds being done by others. So it's like he's addressing Queen Victoria directly here. Okay, that's enough about Dayanand. He sort of kick-started this movement in the late 19th century, which apparently took off considerably. And it's been argued by historians that this movement was a very significant prelude to the nationalist movement for Indian independence. It sort of woke people up. And it's true that it was mainly the British who were slaughtering cows in India. They were feeding their army, and so I don't remember the numbers, but huge numbers of cows were being killed for maintenance of the British who were in India. And it was much, much more cow slaughter by the British than by Muslims in India. The next person of historical note is Mahatma Gandhi, or Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And we all know Srila Prabhupada had his sort of, I don't know if we can call it a love-hate relationship, but it was, as we all know, he was inspired by Gandhi before he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, and I won't go more into that subject, but he very quickly shifted when he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And later, again, we know he wrote, I believe, was it 2 letters he wrote to Gandhi requesting him to change his ways and to basically give up politics and just preach Bhagavad Gita. To neither letter did he receive a reply. What's relevant here for us is that Gandhi was very outspoken about cow protection, and he was highly critical of the cow protection movement. In other words, he was saying these people who are claiming to be protecting cows, it's all bunk. They're not really doing it. And he's also highly critical of Hindus in general for how they treat, or rather mistreat, their animals, especially cows. He gave a lot of talks. The collected writings and speeches of Gandhi comprise, I think it's 99 very thick volumes in their printed form, and you can find it all online. Can all be accessed. Many times he was discussing and speaking out against cow slaughter and so on. And I think it may be interesting to read some of the quotes here. I've also written separately an article about Gandhi and animals, which is going to be published in a book soon. So Gandhi wrote in a letter to Asaf Ali, who was a Muslim. He was a fellow activist for the independence movement. And Gandhi wrote, "I have no right to slaughter all animal life because I find it necessary to slaughter some animal life. Therefore, if I can live well on goats, fish, and fowl, surely enough in all conscience, it is sin for me to destroy cows for my sustenance." And it was some such argument that decided the rishis of old in regarding the cow as sacred, especially when they found that the cow was the greatest economic asset in national life. And I see nothing wrong, immoral, or sinful in offering worship to an animal so serviceable as the cow, so long as my worship does not put her on a level with her creator. That's a letter he wrote in 1920. So this is early 20th century. Okay, he's writing to a Muslim, so he's saying, okay, you can, kill these other animals if you must, but why kill the cow? Okay, then I'm just searching the next relevant quote. Yeah, he's, of course, this is from the political perspective. Cow slaughter became and continues to be in India a very hot topic, dividing and fomenting communalism, as it's called, especially between so-called Hindus and so-called Muslims. So that's very much going on in the early 20th century. And Gandhi writes, quote, "Am I then to fight with or kill a Mohammedan in order to save a cow? In doing so, I would become an enemy of the Mohammedan as well as the cow. Therefore, the only method I know of protecting the cow is that I should approach my Mohammedan brother and urge him, for the sake of the country, to join me in protecting her." So he ties in the idea of the country, protect the country, therefore protect the cow. This kind of connection he makes. And he continues, this is again in the context of the Muslim issue, "I should let the cow go for the simple reason that the matter is beyond my ability. If I were overfull of pity for the cow, I should sacrifice my life to save her, but not take my brother's. This, I hold, is the law of our religion." In other words, he's arguing, don't go fighting the Muslims because they're killing cows. That's not going to help the cows ultimately. You can sacrifice your own life if you like, but not the cow. Don't fight the Muslim. Okay, more on that topic, and then well, maybe that's enough from Gandhi for today. The third person that I speak about, that I write about in the book, may surprise you a bit. It's B.R. Ambedkar. Ambedkar is, Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar. He was a contemporary of Gandhi who was born into a so-called untouchable caste. And it is this which very much defines his whole life, in that he becomes very vocal in protesting the way the so-called untouchables are dealt with in India. And he charges Hindus in particular with perpetuating the system. And he has some discussions or communications with Gandhi, and they sharply disagree. They agree on one thing, and that is that an untouchability should be stopped. It is an unhealthy aberration of society. But they disagree about how it should be done. Gandhi is not for throwing out the Varna system. I would say in this regard, he's very much in line with what Prabhupada would say, that if one understands and would implement the Varna system as originally intended, then the problem is solved. Ambedkar said, no, it's not going to solve the problem because the problem is inbuilt, it's integral to the Varna system. The Varna system is hierarchical, and it will, by its very nature, have a class, at least one class of persons who are outside the Varna system, and they will be oppressed. So, in the end, Ambedkar converted officially to Buddhism, along with about 500,000 of his followers. This was done in a huge ceremony somewhere in Maharashtra, I forget. But it was only 1 month before Ambedkar died in 1956. So he didn't really, was not able to develop his movement. But what I wanted to point out is that Ambedkar wrote a book called The Untouchables, Who Were They and Why They Became Untouchables. And in this book, he gives an analysis of how untouchability comes about, and he ties it very much into he says it was the Buddhists who were initially vocal against animal slaughter in ritual sacrifice, and Prabhupada speaks about this also. And then in his version, the Brahmins, when they see that Buddhism is getting popular, people are following the Buddhists, then the Brahmins take up the spirit of ahimsa and sort of write it into their books, and they become then sort of born again. They become more fanatical than the Buddhists, essentially. And therefore, when someone is eating meat or is slaughtering animals, they become outcast. And then that becomes perpetuated because they are the ones who then are dealing with the dead bodies of cows when they naturally die, or otherwise they're dealing with the dead bodies of human beings. They become untouchable, And in this way, it's all perpetuated. Yeah, Ambedkar, quoting him here, he says, to go one better than the Buddhist bhikshus, the Buddhist monks, not only to give up meat eating, but to become vegetarians, which they did. Oh, sorry, I jumped into the middle. First, what could the Brahmins do to recover the lost ground, the lost popularity? To go one better than the Buddhist bhikshus, not only to give up meat eating, but to become vegetarians, which they did. That this was the object of the Brahmins in becoming vegetarian can be proved in various ways. Well, he doesn't really go into detail then about how he's going to prove that. But this narrative is, to my knowledge, it is somewhat accepted by some historians. Okay, I won't go into further detail. I have some footnote on that and so on. The next and the fourth and the final of the four is our Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace. And my subheading for this section of the book is Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Cow Care for the World. And this is the main point I make, that unlike the first three who were concerned and preoccupied with the politics of India, Srila Prabhupada transcended all of that in more ways than one. And he took the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu beyond India to the world, and with it he brought cow protection. And I quote, let's see, it's a bit longer letter, but I wanted to summarize for readers of this book what is Prabhupada's standards for devotees. And so this is a letter to Niranjan Swami, 1972. Quote, the four sinful activities which one must avoid if there is to be any hope for spiritual advancement are the eating of meat, fish, and eggs, the use of intoxicants, illicit connection with women, and gambling. So these are the first four sins which I ask all of my students to strictly avoid committing. Practically the entire population of the world is entrapped by these four sinful activities. In our Krishna Consciousness Society, we are training our students up to the standard of Brahminical culture. So the great respect we are getting here in India and throughout the rest of the world is due to these restrictions. Actually, our students have surpassed the category of Brahmana because they are Vaishnavas, which means they are transcendental to any material position. And Brahmana is a material order of life, part of the Varna ashrama system. Yeah, so there I'm not even quoting him specifically on cow protection. Then, okay, here's a quote in a letter to Nevatya Ji from 1970. This was soon after, apparently, the West Virginia, the beginning of the New Vrindavan property acquisition was happening. So he writes to this one gentleman, quote, this site situated in the midst of the beautiful West Virginia mountains provides an ideal setting for demonstrating the simplicity of naturalistic living based on Brahminical culture and cow protection in Krishna consciousness. Cow protection practically solves the problems of sustenance and the greater portion of time of the devotees. being not engaged in the frantic scramble of materialistic competition for food and shelter, is kept engaged in the pursuit of spiritual perfection. Incidentally, there is a short article I wrote, which has been published now. If you're not aware, there's a revival of the ISKCON Communications Journal since last year. It's coming out now, one issue per year. The second one will be coming out, I believe, by the end of this month. So in the previous year's journal, I did a little overview history of cow protection in ISKCON to sort of mark some of the highlights of how it's developed over the years, over the decades. So like that, I've introduced Srila Prabhupada again, highlighting that his concern was not India-oriented as such. Ironically, perhaps, I don't know if I should put it this way, but as in preparation for the article I wrote on history of cow protection in ISKCON, I was informed by Kalakanta Prabhu, who is our global minister for cow production and agriculture, that the total number of cows we have in ISKCON worldwide is around 5,000, 4,000 of whom are in India. So most, 4/5 of the cows are in India, and the rest are in the rest of the world. Right, that was a little overview of one section of, Chapter 3, Cows in Contested Fields. And the next section is called Ancient Texts, Modern Controversy. And this is where I get into the issue of animal sacrifice in the Veda, because the claim is by some Indian pundits that no, there was no animal sacrifice. What you read are either interpolations or you are misreading, or they have, various ways of explaining. Prabhupada never said anything like that. He said, no, there is animal sacrifice. But then there's a context, and the context is it's karma kanda, first of all, and second, it's for an age which is not our age. So forget about doing it, even if you think you're very qualified as a priest. So I go into some detail about that controversy, but I think I won't broach that just now. Maybe instead I should stop and see if there are any comments or questions or reflections or contestations in contested fields.
Did Prabhupada encourage people who he could foresee that they won't give up meat to eat other animals, but not the cow? How are we to repeat the same pattern and with people who are unable or unwilling to stop eating meat?
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't that be seen as, and at this age where you can't say anything, you can use certain pronouns, you should use other pronouns, and all politically correct, should that be seen as discrimination between animals? What's the difference?
Yeah, so it's going to depend who you're talking with, I would say. I couldn't point to a specific reference, but I think this would be how Prabhupada would speak. Yes, if you must eat meat. But as I remember also, he would tie that in with the idea of animal sacrifice. And that's something you're never going to get across to anyone. But he would say, okay, you want to eat meat, so take a goat and go ahead, sacrifice to Kali. And do it the right way, and the right way is that you're going to be whispering a mantra which says, today it's you, tomorrow it's me, more or less. Mamsa. And so this then has the value of, because it's being done according to prescription, one will not therefore be degraded. One is already degraded. One won't get further degraded. Now, having said that, it may be relevant to mention that in the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, as I'm sure you all know, there's yama, there's niyama, and the first of 5 principles of yama is ahimsa. And the commentators on that, the Sanskrit commentaries on ahimsa in yoga are very strong. They say this is for everyone, with no exceptions. This is a standard which everyone should follow. There should be no killing of any animals. It's kind of an absolute. I mean, they also say, we know it's not possible. One kills small microbes and such unintentionally, but one should still also try to avoid that as much as possible. So, and the emphasis there is that it's for everyone. It's what's the word? It's general dharma. It's not for a specific varna or a specific ashrama. It's for everyone. So you could go with that, especially with the popularity nowadays, of yoga. That, you want to practice yoga, hey, get with Patanjali. Get right with Patanjali.
Do you find it well nowadays? It's even a little supermarket in the middle of the boonies has organic food and vegan options and etc. etc. So it's not much of an issue. But there are other issues with animals. For example, here in Gita Nagari, there is a hunting season for deer.
Yeah.
They say that. And how do you see that? Like there are animals, for example, like groundhogs or deer, and they're pretty indiscriminate, and they actually eat the crops. And there's a whole production that needs to be set up in order to avoid for trees, young trees, and vegetable gardens to be decimated by these animals. So how do we deal with this, the ahimsa business, if just let them eat? Also, the idea that a wasp or a mosquito, or a gnat or any of these little creatures that are bothersome and come, ticks, to suck your blood, Are we allowed to break the ahimsa rule in these cases?
Well, first of all, there's no such thing as absolute ahimsa unless you don't eat. If you sit in one place and, don't eat, you can become a Jain ascetic who's doing salekana, they call it. Salekana is when they gradually give up eating in preparation to leave the body, as what they take to be also a complete shedding of karma. So that's how you can be completely non-violent. Otherwise, there's going to be violence to some degree, because ahastani sahastanam apadani chatuspadam palguni tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. Life is the life of life. In order to eat, there is taking of life. And there's protecting, and I would say another principle here is aggression, protection against aggression. So if there's an aggressive animal, it's appropriate to protect oneself. And if one's trying to grow some trees, and you don't want the deer to eat them all up, some fencing may be required. But the arguments for hunting, the necessity to keep populations down, and all of that, there's no end to it. It's hard to say where, because we as human beings don't really know how we fit into the ecosystem. We seem to be some sort of aberration to the whole system. That's, I think, all I would say on that for now. Rajalila Mataji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much. Thank you very much for your extensive research, and thank you for bringing that research to Gita Nagari and other places, I'm sure. I like this point you made about the cow being the reservoir of compassion. I like that you have that in your book. Yeah, it's a beautiful point. And given that you're speaking about Gandhi and these different personalities, I was wondering, recently someone was sharing with me that that commercial milk is acceptable for devotees, because when a devotee takes that milk, then they actually assist those cows in their karma, if you will, because a devotee is offering that milk, to Krishna. And so I'm a little bit curious. I know this is a topic that's discussed often about commercial milk versus milk from protected cows, as far as devotees are concerned.
Yeah. Well, that's a topic. I can only say for myself, I decided about 8 years ago that I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of taking dairy from cows that we know are going to be slaughtered. To say, well, I'm taking and then I'm offering and therefore it's benefiting, I just don't feel personally. If maybe it's true, maybe if Srila Prabhupada takes that milk and offers it, they're going to be. But if I take it and offer it, I don't know. So I just decided, no, for me, I don't need it. And so for me, I'm not saying it's not for it's for everyone, but for myself, I just feel like I can do a little austerity. It's not a big deal to reduce, essentially to give it up except for very occasionally, if I'm in Gita Nagari, I may get some milk from your protected cows there, but otherwise, and I don't feel deprived as a result. And I may say, frankly, I think we need to question our overall ISKCON culture of offering so much milk to Krishna. To me, milk is it's a delicacy. It's something which, if it's there, then if it's there as milk from protected cows, how wonderful that is. Let's offer it to Krishna. And if it's not there, we offer what is available. We offer the best of everything. Is it really the best of everything that we're offering this milk from the commercial dairy? That's another point. I really have to question that. Is it milk?
Even if it is milk, which cow gets benefited? There's
it's all merged together.
Thousands of cows.
It's thousands of cows and so on. Yeah. Okay, I see a hand from Prema Kishore. Is that all right, Rajalila Mataji?
Yes, Marge. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Prema Kishore.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, August to Prabhupada. Thank you so much for the very informative and relevant class and giving quotes from different places and comparing to what really is important. I have one question, and this comes from my background. So my mother worked for 35 years in Indian Council of Agricultural Research in the Department of Animal Husbandry. You know, the agricultural research has different, the horticulture, the entomology. So my mom was in animal husbandry. So, so a part of her work was doing the field work for different productions of dairy from different kinds of cows. And I remember visiting with her to the dairy farms, the research dairy farms of India, which is in northern India, Karnal, near Kurukshetra.
Mm-hmm.
I was very young to understand, but I could see, because my mom used to take us, that there was a talk between breeding of the cows and seeing that which cow breed will produce more milk.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember getting papers at home from different PhD scholars that my mom would approve that which research should go on. Like, she was one of the tenures, not the highest. You know how the paper has to be approved by the board review. Mm-hmm. So now my question is, after coming to Krishna consciousness, that do you really, where does this interbreeding of different species of cows stand so that we can get more milk producing breed?
Uh-huh.
And that came when you use the word Jersey cow, because Jersey cow is the famous cow in India, which is actually an interbreed between two different cows.
Yeah.
Sorry.
As I remember, thank you. As I remember, Srila Prabhupada does not disapprove of interbreeding for increase of milk production. For taking both Taurus, Western cows, and breeding with both Indicas to increase milk. But then, all of that research that your mother was involved with, that's all for the dairy industry of India, which happens to be now, since the 1970s, the largest dairy industry in the world. But why is it the largest in the world? Because of how it's been organized. And how it's been organized is that it's based on the slaughter of the cows when they are giving less milk. So it's one thing to breed cows for more milk, and it's another thing to breed them for more milk and then slaughter them after they're giving less milk, right? Yeah.
So are you saying that India is the largest cow slaughtering country in the whole world?
No, not in total volume. They're slaughtering. I have the numbers somewhere, but it's around nine. I think it's 9 million cows per year, but that's not counting water buffalo. And that's a curious thing in India, that the buffalo has become more popular now for milk production because there isn't the negative cultural, religious, what do you say, against,
Implications.
implications against buffaloes. And that gets back to what Sarvatma is saying, why favor this animal over that animal? And that's an issue in India, and one scholar has pointed out it very much parallels the caste system. You have castes among humans, and you have castes among animals in India. And that's strange, but that's what's happening. So in India, the latest count of how many people, the percentage of people in India who are vegetarian has dropped drastically in the last 50 years. According to one estimate, it's down to 18%. It's the largest percentage still in the world, but it was much more than that 50, 100 years ago. And how the cows are treated in India, it's nothing like we understand it's meant to be. And even those cows who are protected lifetime, what kind of a life do they have? I really question. I've seen some of the goshalas. These cows cannot go out and graze on open fields of grass. Their entire lives, if they're not within a structure, a barn, their whole lives, they may be out in a sort of corral, but they're just being fed hay and so on that's brought into them. What kind of life is that?
Thank you, ma'am.
One could get sort of depressed about all these things, and therefore I think this is another reason that we do well as followers of Srila Prabhupada, to show what the real standard ought to be, even if it's in a very small scale, even if we only have 5,000 cows all over the world. Hopefully more than that as time goes on, but yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. Krishna.
Do we still have time? There's, I think, one more question or comment. What is your time schedule, Sarvatma? He's not responding. Well, let's go ahead. Gaur, I see Gaur. Prabhu, do you have a...
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your class. I had a question, your statement about milk being a delicacy. It was my understanding that in Shastra it states that all of the religious principles are derived from milk. And so in order to imbibe qualities that are conducive to advancing in Krishna consciousness, we require milk. It's not a delicacy from my understanding, it's a requirement. So I was wondering if you could shine some light on that.
Thank you. Yeah, good point. Again, first, what constitutes milk? Are we getting milk from the supermarket, or is it something else? And if it's not really what we understand to be milk, then again, this point about what I just said about what the cows are being fed, the research from Purushottam Kshetra Prabhu, your very own there in Gita Nagari, indicates that unless the cows are grazing in fields where there's a variety of greenery, they're not going to be getting the DHA, I think it's called, which is that chemical compound, which is what seems to be what Srila Prabhupada is talking about, is nourishing the brain. So, yeah, that's the first question. What is this milk? And if not, then what's the point of that? Presumably in earlier times, there would have been lots of first-class milk of cows protected. But what do we have now? So then, okay, so some decide, anyway, because of this idea of milk being the source of religious principles. I don't know of a specific quote in Shastra. I know Prabhupada says that. It would be interesting to see where that is explicitly articulated in Shastra. Maybe it's there. I just haven't seen it. So, okay, let's go with that, and let's go ahead and take just purchase milk from the market. Or do we decide, yes, it's really important, and therefore it's a priority to expand the whole program of protecting cows and having cows who are giving us what we know is the real thing, real milk. And then I think here is the point, that it's the root of religious principles when the whole program is in place. And the whole program of having milk is having cows having a lifestyle whereby the cows are cared for and they are healthy and so on. And then that whole framework, that creates the context for a religious life. That's how I would understand that. Does that make sense? No reply. Okay. Looks like we... Oh.
Yes, sorry, I'm milking cows. So
you're milking the cows.
Yes, yeah.
All glories to your service.
All glories to the cows.
Yeah.
So then I guess that store-bought milk is a luxury, whereas milk from protected cows, what we've heard about milk being a source of religious drink, protected milk.
It's pretty hard to hear you now, but anyway. So maybe Rajalila.
I have a quick question following up on Gaura's question, Maharaj. I was a little curious. So given that you are a hermeneutic scholar, I'm asking this question.
Now I'm in trouble.
Not in Sastra, if this quote about DHA chemical that's supposed to improve the brain is not in Sastra, and it's a Prabhupada said, does that mean that can't be questioned?
No, Prabhupada is saying that milk is benefiting the brain, and some scientific research, and we all know scientific research gets revised. Next year someone else will say, well, no, it's not exactly like that, it's like this, or who knows what. But from what we know today, that substance can be isolated, can be identified. And it's not that that has to be expressly found in Shastra. That was not seen as necessary by those who compose Shastra. So I don't think there's an opposition there.
Someone could say that then that's not absolute, that works. That's just scientific. And as you said, science change all the time.
Yeah, that's true. So, but okay, that's a whole nother topic. Is how do we take scientific statements and what value do we place on them, and so on. I would just say there's a difference between science and scientism, and what Srila Prabhupada mainly criticizes is not science, it's scientism, which is the claim that all truth can be gained by empirical research, by empirical methods. That's scientism. Anyway, but so I think that's knowledge that we get from science may be taken and may be made use of. I think we do it all the time, consciously or unconsciously. But we need to always leaven it with our spiritual vision that Srila Prabhupada gives us, that the Acharyas give us. Should we go to Taraka, Prabhu? And then I think I need to end because there's a Sunday program here getting underway. I should join.
Thank you for your talk, Maharaj. It's delightful to hear this topic, and you interesting and thought-provoking ideas. Through my thoughts here, you've stimulated so many different thoughts for me that I hardly know where to begin. Regarding
Oops, did we get frozen? Uh-oh.
may be within milk that gives it its particular value. I think that we don't actually know what that is. That science may point to this or that. There was a point years back when we speculated that it was B12 in milk that was the valuable element. And now I would say it's another speculation that DHA or whatever it may be that we're thinking. But I don't think that we have any specific statements that point to precisely what it is in milk that gives it that particular value. So it seems to me that the entire subject has to remain speculative. Mm-hmm. But Srila Prabhupada, in any case, valued milk to such an extent that he made numerous statements essentially mandating that the devotees must get milk daily. That 2 cups of milk daily, I think, was the general standard. For children, it was substantially more than that, I think, and also pregnant women, much more milk, 6 to 8 cups of milk in a day. Srila Prabhupada felt that was essential. That potentially we are doing harm to the development of children, and even before their birth, if the mother is not getting adequate milk. So he felt it was extremely important. Furthermore, we know from Srila Prabhupada's comments in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that he was very fully aware of the evils of commercial dairy. He described them in some detail.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we see that he personally chose to purchase milk from commercial dairy. We can see from his diary that when he came to the United States, he regularly purchased milk from the grocery stores. He had no problem with that, and he also instructed his disciples to do the same thing. For years within our movement, the standard was that every temple purchased milk from commercial dairy. And obviously, Srila Prabhupada wanted that we be able to produce our own milk from protected cows, but in lieu of that, his standard seemed to be that milk was so important that we will take milk from commercial dairy regardless of the fact that the cows are slaughtered. I had a specific question about the development, the origins of the concept of cow protection. We know from Srimad Bhagavatam and other texts that cow protection obviously was a thing dating back to at least the time of Krishna. But there is currently a controversy in India, as you know well, argue that that the idea of protecting cows is not really feature of early Vedic culture, that you don't find this in the Vedic literature, and some would argue to the contrary. If you could shine a little light on that issue.
Well, that's the topic of this next section of the book, of this chapter that I was mentioning. So I don't want to really get into it. It's complicated. And you're welcome to read it. As I mentioned, I guess you came in a bit later, but you can download a digital copy of the book.
Yeah, I have the book. I've had it for some time. I have skimmed it. Haven't had the time to really apply myself to it. I got through only the beginning. I haven't gotten to that point at which you're discussing this particular topic.
It starts on page 82.
Can I suggest that you put the link for the download on the chat for those devotees who would like to download your book? And also, can I also suggest that we address this topic on your next appearance? I'm not talking about your birthday here.
How many lifetimes do I have to? Okay. All right. So I'm about to give the link. Just now coming. Here we go. Chat. Okay. Oops. Okay, that's it.
One more issue, if there is time. I just you were commenting on what was it, the 9 million cows slaughtered in India.
Taraka Prabhu, we have to allow Maharaj. He's in the middle of a program and he has to attend it. So maybe we'll leave it. If you can actually write it down so you don't forget it, and we'll address it on the next time Maharaj speaks, which I'm gonna arrange with them to be rather soon, if possible.
Okay, good. So, thank you all, and we will sign off here.
Thank you. Devotees, please unmute yourselves and give your thanks to Maharaj, and we'll let him go now.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Oh, Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you,
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj.
Prabhupada ki jai. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.